Welcome to the delayed second round of the 2020 South African Cross-Country Series, the Bronkhorstspruit 400. With strict COVID-19 protocols in place, the race may have had a slightly different feel about it this year, but it certainly delivered when it came to the excitement. All the adrenaline and action of the race is brought to you by Toyota Gazoo Racing, Ford, Total Quartz and Pirelli. 2019 seems an age ago now that the world has changed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Back then, the DSP was an open, welcoming place where spectators could mingle with the teams and meet their heroes up close. Last year also saw some cold and misty weather for the race, but fast forward to 2020 and it was all change. The DSP was sealed off, accessible only to the teams, organisers and select media. Strict protocols governed the event, with every person entering the DSP screened by medics, completing a questionnaire and only being admitted if wearing a mask. Hands were regularly sanitized and social distancing was observed. A cautious reopening of the SACCS as required by both the government and Motorsport South Africa. With that said, there were already some points on the board for 2020 and a lot to play for at Bronkies. The man at the top of the table was Henk Ladergan, with teammate Shanil de Villiers just 7 points adrift. Lance Woolridge was sitting in third. Class T saw Johan Horn stealing in early March, with Gary Berthold in second. The battle in Class A saw Clint Gibson topping the table, followed by Tim Howes and Sandra Labuschagne-Jonk. And finally, in Class G of the series, Dean Bradbury had emerged victorious from round one, with Theo Erasmus in second and Nico Durant in third. That's how the points stacked up after round one of the championship, and despite the long gap, all the crews were eager to add to their tally, none more so than defending champion and winner of round one, Henk Ladergan.
No, really happy to be back, looking forward to the race. It's a strange feeling being here in the service park. Everybody's got masks on, not a lot of spectators around, so it's a whole different feel to the race. But I'm sure when we start going, it's going to be business as usual.
The Toyota Gazoo Racing SA driver's biggest challenge has come from his teammate and Dakar legend, Shanil de Villiers.
Yeah, look, it's nice to be back. I mean, we haven't been in a car for 4 or 5 months now, so we only had the first race of the year, and great to be back again. I'm sure everybody here is excited to be back.
The battle in Class FIA has been growing steadily hotter as more competitors join the top flight of Southern African cross-country racing. While the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA squad has been reigning supreme in this category, the lads from the Ford Castrol cross-country team have now wheeled out 2 Class FIA Ford Rangers in the hands of the 2 Woolridge brothers.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be back. We still got the solid actual upgraded T-Class car, so not fighting with both hands just yet, but very excited to be back, and we're going to just go as hard as we can.
Brother Gareth has, however, missed the action for much longer and was chomping at the bit to get racing once again. In Class T, Johan and Werner Horn in the Malalan Toyota Hilux drew first blood at round number 1, and the brothers were hoping for a repeat here in Bronkhorstspruit.
I think the guy for us to catch today is Gary. He's always fast in this race. So let's see what happens.
We also caught up with Sandra Labuschagne-Jonk, who campaigns the Total Agri Porter in Class A of the special vehicle category.
Everyone's excited, everyone's rested, and everyone had time to spend money on some upgrades and times on upgrades going forward.
The Bronkhorstspruit 400 also saw Brian Baragwana team up with Dakar motorcycle entry Tay Perry, who would for the first time read the notes for the former quad racer. Things got underway with the Pirelli qualifying race, which took place over a distance of 67 kilometres and got underway at 1300 hours on Friday, August the 14th. But there was one order of business before the flag dropped for the first time in 5 months. In the days leading up to the Bronkhorstspruit 400, 2 legends of the sport had unfortunately passed away, and the entire SACCS fraternity took a minute to pay their respects to former ace racer Andre Koch and longtime chief marshal and member of the SACCS Exco, Peter Getcliffe. And then, at exactly 1 o'clock, it was finally time to get back to racing. The qualifying route started and finished near the Suturing function venue, which also served as the HQ and designated service park. From there, the route wound its way south and east over a variety of terrain types before looping back to the finish. Class G saw former champs Werner and Leon Mostert record the 4th fastest time in the side-by-sides after incurring a 5-minute penalty. Without the penalty, which they received for speeding in a controlled zone, the pair would have comfortably led the class. As a result, they were pipped by Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers, who went 3rd fastest, as well as Ken Rutherford and Gerrit Schutte. But class honours went to Nico Durant and Rikus Hutting in their Can-Am Maverick, who posted a time 15 seconds quicker than that of Rutherford and Schutte. Class A saw Andre Fourie and Hendrikus Pienaar go 3rd fastest in their BAT Spec 3, after also losing 5 minutes incurred due to speeding. The same fate befell Sandra and Jaco Jonk in the Total Agri Porter, who would have comfortably won the qualifier were it not for their transgression. In the end, class honours for the qualifying race went to Tim Howes and Gary Campbell in their Zarco Magnum. The lads from KZN making their intent for the main race clear from the get-go. There was one more victim to the speed zone, this time Class T, where Terence Marsh and Wade Harris were docked 5 minutes. Even so, they qualified as the 4th fastest car in Class T, with Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen more than 8 minutes ahead after the qualifier. Prinsloo and Vermeulen in turn trailed Gary Berthold and Jeff Minute by 1 minute and 28 seconds. But the win in Class T went to Johan and Werner Horn in the Malalan Toyota Hilux. The pair had a great run, though their gap to Berthold was only 12 seconds.
We had a good run. We had 2 small wrong slots. But the car was good. The team did a good job. So yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
And so, onto the lads and ladies in Class FIA. The Bronkhorstspruit 400 saw no fewer than 11 of these beasts take the starters' orders, though Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner failed to finish the qualifier due to a broken gear linkage. The remaining 10 cars, however, had an epic battle. In the end, however, it came down to 5 men, 2 of whom shared the same surname, Woolridge. The Ford boys went 4th and 5th fastest in the end, with Lance pipping brother Gareth by just 10 seconds.
Yeah, good start. We just got to keep it there tomorrow.
Ahead of them came the 2 Toyota Gazoo Racing SA crews of Janelle de Villiers with Jean Moore beside him and defending champs Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings. De Villiers was 1 minute 30 seconds slower than his younger teammate, but still in a good position for the race. And Ladergan and Cummings seemed untouchable despite an errant water bottle hampering their progress early on.
I think I forgot to take the water bottle out from my footwell, so at the first braking point I was playing soccer there with the water bottle.
But then came Chris Visser and Donnie Stassen in their Class FIA Toyota Hilux. Visser had attended the funeral of Andre Koch in Freiburg and flew to Gauteng shortly after. Special dispensation for the organisers allowed him to start the qualifier as the last car, but the burly businessman and farmer made the most of this. He ended up splitting the 2 Works Toyota Hiluxes, going just 20 seconds slower than Ladergan and setting himself up in the perfect position from which to pounce during the race. With the dust settling over Bronkhorstspruit, this is how things stacked up after the Pirelli qualifying race. Class FIA saw Ladergan and Cummings lead the way, though their margin over Visser and Stassen was just 20 seconds. Class T saw the Horns topping the standings, with Berthold and Minute in 2nd, but just 12 seconds back. Prinsloo and Vermeulen were placed in 3rd and Marsh and Harris in 4th. In the special vehicle category, it was Howes and Campbell who led the charge, with the Yonks in 2nd and Fourie and Pienaar in 3rd. The Class G battle saw Durant and Hutting take the honours in qualifying, with Rutherford and Schutte in 2nd, just 5 seconds behind the leaders. And with that, day 1 of the Bronkhorstspruit 400 drew to a close, setting us up beautifully for the main race of round number 2. Join us again after the break.
What unites us? Is it the color of our jersey or our passion for competition?
Absolutely majestic. It's in!
It's all of this and so much more. That's why Supersport is bringing you 4 variety channels. Don't miss the biggest moments from your favorite sport on your World of Champions.
Resilience is put to the test, mountains are conquered, and heroes made. Take your place in the peloton for the Tour de France. 3 weeks of riveting action on your World of Champions. Proudly brought to you by Marriott Investment Managers.
Work hard to be here, baby. Put your hands right there. You got this.
Record. Welcome back to the outskirts of Bronkhorstspruit, around 50 kilometers east of Pretoria, alongside the N4 on the border between Gauteng and Mpumalanga. After more than 5 months, it was race day once again. At 8:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, the string of Class FIA, Class T, special vehicles and side-by-side off-road races were lined up and raring to go. At the front of the queue, defending champions and winners of the Pirelli qualifying race, Henk Ladergan and navigator Brett Cummings, who were the first to set off in the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. Organisers knew that dust was going to play a huge role in Bronkhorstspruit, so the dust gaps were set at 3-minute intervals. Next up, Chris Visser and Donnie Stassen in the Total Exilium Toyota Hilux. They were followed by the second of the factory Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hiluxes, this one manned by Dakar legend Janelle de Villiers and Jean Moore. And over the next hour or so, every 3 minutes, SA's top gravel road racers got their respective races underway. With the entire field now well and truly underway, it was time to focus on the battle at the front. Ladergan managed to slowly edge out a little advantage over his nearest rival, Chris Visser. The Northwest cattle farmer was on a mission, and although he lost a few seconds to the youngster over the first few kilometers, the Total Exilium Hilux managed to open up a slight gap to the third place Toyota Gazoo Racing Hilux of Janelle de Villiers. And then, just as we thought that Ladergan was going to disappear off into the distance, this happened. The Hilux was stuck for a good minute or so while Cummings figured out a way to open up the closed gate. But this evidence clearly showed what happened, and the organisers kindly gave him back the time at the end of the loop, reaffirming his lead over Visser. Behind the leading trio of Toyotas, all hell was breaking loose, with most of the fireworks coming from Dakar quad rider Brian Baragwanath, with Dakar lady bike racer Tay Perry reading the notes from the passenger seat of the Century Racing CR6. As he and Perry started to also find each other, their pace increased, and they clawed their way through the field from 9th all the way up to 4th, halfway through loop number 1. Some of their victims along the way included the third Toyota Gazoo Racing Hilux, driven by Shamir Variawa and Dennis Murphy, who, despite losing ground to Baragwanath, still moved up a position or two on the overall rankings with quite a few kilometres of Loop 1 still to go. Another pairing who made up some ground was that of Clint Weston and Gerrit Snyman. The King Price Extreme branded Navarra started the race in 10th, but did well to occupy 5th as they neared the end of Loop number 1. With Baragwanath and Weston making up ground, it meant that someone was losing out. On this occasion, it was the Ford Castrol Cross Country Team Ranger, driven by Lance Woolridge and Alvin Vonk, and brother Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer. The two Fords started the race in 4th and 5th respectively, but slid back to 6th and 7th by late morning. This wouldn't have bothered the likeable brothers in the least, as they are both campaigning Class T cars and scoring in the Class FIA Championship, whilst they wait for their new Class FIA masterpieces to be completed. Over in the fiercely contested Class T of the cross-country series, things were not going so well for the main protagonists. Everyone was expecting a major battle between the likes of former champions and pole setters Johan and Werner Horn from Malalan in their Hilux, the Total Exilium Hilux of Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott, and the NWM Ford Ranger of Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen, and the Redline Navara of Terence Marsh, and now the Secha Zulu in the hot seat. Berthold was the first to run into trouble as the diff cried enough early on, forcing them to the sidelines. The Horns from Malalantoda were the next ones to run into trouble. The brothers' patience was tested to the limit, and although they made it back to Bronkhorstspruit for the rest break, they nearly lost an hour. Let's hear from Werner what caused the big delay.
Yeah, we painted the rims, and the rims didn't sit on the hubs, so all 4 tires came loose. We left the left back wheel came completely off, broke all the studs. We managed to put 2 studs and drove about 80 k's back with only 2 studs.
Prinsloo was next to see the ugly side of Lady Luck as they experienced everything from a flat tyre to broken suspension, enough to prevent them from starting the second loop of the race. They were out. This played right into the hands of Marsh and Zulu, who kept their noses clean, and the Red Line Navara in the middle of the road to now lead Class T. Class A of the Specials, as they are also known, is where you will find the big thunder in the form of the crazy-looking cars with the massive V8 engines powering only the rear wheels, causing more than its fair share of dust. It's probably one of the last places you'll expect to find a woman, but this is exactly where you'll find Sandra Labuskakny-Young, behind the wheel of the big Total Agri Porter. We met up with the lady driver back at DSP.
But we're happy to be here in one piece, and hopefully there's still 150 kilometers for us to go there. Our plan is just to go out and enjoy it and hope Lady Luck is on our side in Women's Month.
Sandra is usually at or very near the top, but on this occasion it was the pairing of Tim Howes and Gary Campbell in their Zarko Magnum who reached the DSP and the halfway mark with a lead of almost 2 minutes over Sandra and husband Jaco Jonk.
Yeah, I had my race face on and I pushed a bit harder, so hopefully it will show with the times.
If you're looking to find a way into the exciting world of cross-country racing, this is it. The class for so-called side-by-side vehicles, or Class G. But here in Bronkhorstspruit, most of the guys in their Class Gs were reporting a number of small technical issues that prevented them from going flat out all the way. When the times were added at the halfway mark of the race, it was the defending champions and class stalwarts, Werner and Leon Mostert, who battled their way through the difficulties to hold a commanding lead over the similar Can-Am Maverick of Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers in second, and Hanno Bierman and Peter de Beer reaching the halfway mark in third. So there it is, confirmation of the scoreboard for the special vehicle category with the names of Tim Howes and Gary Campbell at the top with an advantage of less than 2 minutes over the Yonks. Despite having electrical problems inside most of the Class G cars, the Mosterts were the first ones to reach the DSP ahead of Peter Walter. That was most of the action from the first half of the Bronkhorstspruit 400 near a very windy and dusty town with the same name. All or most of the top runners had now reached the designated service park where both men, women and their machines could enjoy a little rest before doing it all over again. After the short Pirelli qualifying race on the Friday and the Saturday morning's first loop, it's the name of Henk Ladergan who appears at the very top of the standings with a 1 minute and 7 second advantage over rival Chris Visser, with Junior de Villiers a little further back in third. The man on the move was Brian Baragwanath, who fought his way up into fourth position. Terence Marsh was the runaway leader in Class T, with rivals the Horns and Prinsloo and Berthold all running into some kind of trouble. Back in DSP, it was time to catch up with some of the top drivers. Brian Baragwanath was clearly getting to grips with both his navigator as well as the long legs of the very fast Century Racing CR6.
Tay was really good today. It's like, you know, from yesterday to today, she went from rookie to pro. Really impressive.
At the very top of the standings, we saw another battle between Chris Visser and Henk Ladergan. Visser clearly enjoys the fast and open stuff and had every intention to take the fight to Ladergan over the closing part of the race.
Yeah, I must say, I like these fast-flowing stuff. So here and there I was maybe overcautious with the rocks and that. But yeah, the second lap I was going to push hard. Very hard.
Visser would have his work cut out for him because champion Henk Ladergan seemed well in control despite running into that closed gate and having a little difficulty finding the route through the tall grass.
A bit scary because you're coming through the sixth gear and all of a sudden there's just thick grass and you have to almost guess where the road is.
Just before midday on the Saturday, the crews swapped their face masks for helmets once again as they prepared to take on the mealie fields of Bronkhorstspruit. During the service break, field was regrouped according to their position on the overall standings, which meant that Ladachan would once again be the one to open up the now more familiar road. He was followed by Visser, De Villiers and the flying Baragwanath. As expected, the battle at the front would be a fierce one between SA's top drivers in the fastest cars. But let's start at the other end of the field to see who survived the dust and who managed to stay clear of the many obstacles along the route of the Bronkhorstspruit 400. Youngster Kent Rutherford, with the experienced Gerard Skitter in the Red Line Motorsport Can-Am Maverick, showed great pace, but the son of SACCS chairman Archie Rutherford was forced to call it a day with a few technical issues, all part of the learning curve. The same could be said for Dean Bradbury and Timmy Brutus, whose Canon Rotex also couldn't make it through the weekend. In fact, most of the Class G or side-by-side competitors were finding that the fast and open route here in Bronkies was taking its toll on their machines. So Hanno Bierman and Peter de Beer were happy to reach the end and be classified as finishers. They were beaten to the finish, though, by debutant Simon Murray, who was heard saying that swapping the tar for dirt was the best experience of his life, despite rolling his car at some point and picking up a few flat tyres. He, however, just missed out on a podium position as third place in Class G was earned by Nico Durant and Rickers Hutting in the number G46 Can-Am Maverick. For Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers, they had a cleaner run inside their G66 Can-Am to reach Bronkies with the second fastest time in the class for the day. They were comfortably ahead of third place Durant, but there was still a bit of daylight between them and eventual class winners Werner and Leon Mostert. The Mosterts have made a bit of a habit of dominating the Class G in recent years, and round 2 of the 2020 championship was no different, as they stormed to yet another victory despite not having a clean run themselves.
Endurance and perseverance. You got to keep it and keep going with it and bring it to the end.
On to the cars in Class A of the special vehicle category. On this occasion, Class A turned into a two-way battle between Sandra and Jaco Jonk in the big Total Agri Porter and the Zarco Magnum, driven by Tim Howes and Gary Campbell. These two were at each other's throats all weekend long, with Howes starting the second loop with an advantage of less than 2 minutes over the determined lady driver. But unfortunately for Sandra, some technical issues hampered her progress and destroyed her hopes of catching Howes, who was doing a great job of bringing the car home in one piece to claim his first ever national Class A victory. There was no sweet taste of victory champagne, but that didn't spoil it for the first-time winners.
And it was great fun, and thanks very much to Gary. He's been a fantastic nav, and also to prep the car. The car was faultless, so that was fantastic.
Confirmation of Howes and Campbell taking the Class A victory over Sandra and Jaco Jonk by a relatively comfortable margin in the end. The Mosterts once again topped the timesheets in the Class Gs ahead of Peter Walter and Nico Durant. With the special vehicle race done and dusted, let's shift our attention to the usual race between Ford and Toyota in the hotly contested Class T of the production car category. On this occasion, the specific fight never really materialized, as most of the main contenders had to throw in the towel, leaving the way wide open for the very consistent pairing of Terence Marsh and Lesego Zulu to storm through to a well-deserved win in the Class Ts. Here's Marshy with his story.
We made a strategy just to make sure we didn't climb out the car. That was, and that's really what we did. Stay on the book and don't climb out the car.
All that remained now was to determine the order of Class FIA and the overall winners. After suffering from a few early setbacks, father and son, Johan and Sean van Staden, were not going to be on the podium here in Bronkhorstspruit. But the Alfa Renault Duster fought back bravely to reach the finish and claim some valuable points. And so did the Red Line Nissan Navara, capably driven by Ernst Roberts and navigated by Henry Kerner. After not completing the Pirelli qualifying race the day before, Roberts did well to fight through and claimed a well-earned 11th place overall. And how about this one? Clint Weston and former rally navigator Gerard Snyman were well on course to claim a career best 5th overall. Weston quite literally had the finish line in sight. And then this. It took a while to get going, which dropped him from 5th in the standings down to 8th, a case of what could have been. Thank you is probably what both Woolridge brothers had to say when they saw the leaderboard at the finish, as Weston's mistake allowed both Ford Castrol Racing Rangers to gain a position. Remember, these guys are actually in Class T cars, but driving in Class FIA in order to score points, whilst they finished building a brand new Class FIA Ranger. In the end, it was younger brother Gareth and Navi Boyd Dreyer who pipped Lance and Alvin to the post by a mere 47 seconds. It was getting tight at the top of the field with a number of very fast and competitive teams all fighting for the top spots, including the Toyota Gazoo Racing Hilux of Shamir Variawa and Dennis Murphy. In the end, the former special vehicle champion had no choice but to settle for the points that came from a fine 5th position overall. That's because this guy and girl were on a mission. Everyone knew that Baragwanath and the Century CR6 had the speed to win races, especially on an event like this, with open terrain where the CR6 can really stretch its legs. What made the performance even more remarkable was the fact that this was Tay Perry's first ever go in the navigator seat. Perry really found their groove and set the fastest time overall on loop number 2, good enough for a well-earned 4th place overall come the end. This meant that Mr. Consistency himself, Chanel de Villiers, alongside Jean Moore reading the notes instead of his usual Spanish co-driver Alex Arrow, started the day in 3rd, and that's exactly where the Toyota Gazoo Racing Hilux ended after both a clean and fast run around the mealie fields here in Bronkhorstspruit. That left us with 2 to go. The 3rd Toyota Gazoo Racing Hilux of champions Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings, and the slightly older Total Exilium Hilux of former champion Chris Visser and Donnie Stassen. Visser was flying and tried his best to close the gap to the young pretender, who in turn was doing a fantastic job of keeping his nose clean out front. Let's go in car with Ladergan as he was nearing the end of the race. Ooh, what a scary moment for the champions who very nearly went swimming. Fortunately, they managed to get themselves unstuck, but valuable time was lost. It was now a straight fight to the finish between Ladergan and Visser, with the clock finally revealing that Ladergan still managed to do enough to claim victory. What a race! And here it is, the production vehicle scoreboard showing that Ladergan took the win over Visser, with de Villiers taking the final podium position. Baragwanath and Variawa rounded out the top 5, whilst Terence Marsh claimed the victory and the win in Class T for the first time in 2020. No podium celebrations or champagne spraying this time around, thanks to the dreaded virus, but we did get a chance to catch up with race winner Ladergan, who talked us through that close call.
We came in there just a bit too hot and we bounced over the road and almost fell off the, well, we did fall off the dam wall, but nearly rolled it into the dam. We were on 2 wheels and then we were stuck there. So me and Brett both got out the car, ran around. I saw like we might just make it out here. Just managed to spin the back around and then only just made it out back onto the dam walls.
Thanks for joining. This was all the action from the Bronkhorstspruit 400, and it was proudly brought to you by the South African Cross Country Series in association with Toyota Gazoo Racing, Ford, Total Quartz and Pirelli.